Good evening, or afternoon rather, everyone. This is Mellissa Thomas of Florida National News coming to you guys with the Thursday edition of our FNN Politics and Power Show. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Now, today we're going to talk with the West Lakes Partnership Executive Director, Mr. Timothy Ayers. He's going to give us kind of an update as to what the West Lakes Partnership has been up to, particularly during the course of the pandemic and the quarantine, how the organization has been basically handling itself over the course of the last few months, how they've been involved in the community, how the pandemic has shifted the way they serve the community, and what's coming up next for the project, for the partnership. And for those who aren't quite familiar with what the West Lakes Partnership is, it is a consortium of West Lakes residents. And if you're not familiar with the West Lakes area, this is a part of Western Orlando that is within the vicinity of Camping World Stadium. So if you're familiar with attending Camping World Stadium for any of the events that have been taking place there, or not for this year, but over the last few years, the neighborhoods that surround Camping World Stadium comprise the West Lakes Partnership. So Timothy Ayers is the executive director and has been for the last 3 years. So just to give you guys a brief bio on Tim Ayers, just so you can get to know a little bit more about him before we bring him on. He's originally from the state of Ohio, and he's been a resident in Central Florida for the past 6 years. Now, he served prior to this as Director of Grants for Farm Share and as Regional Legislative Field Advocate for the Florida State Office of the American Heart Association. He holds a Master of Arts in Education from the University of Louisville and 2 undergraduate degrees from Capital University and Western Kentucky University. And he is the proud father of 3 adult children. So needless to say, this gentleman has A, been busy, and B, is no stranger to leadership. So without further ado, we welcome Timothy Ayers to our show. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor to be on your show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's jump right in terms of how have you been handling the pandemic? We'll start on the personal side and then talk about how the West Lakes Partnership has been adapting to it. But how have you been during the course of the quarantine and everything?
Well, personally, my children and I have been blessed. We have not been affected by the virus. We've had a number of friends and relatives that unfortunately have, but they're doing quite well now. Okay. We have, and prayerfully they have, followed CDC guidelines in terms of how to avoid it as much as possible. And so we're doing quite well, blessed, and highly favored that none of us have had to go through that. Either my children or my 7 siblings have had to go through the virus and some of, the effects of it.
Good, that's great.
Professionally, we've had to adjust. West Lakes Partnership has had to adjust in terms of how we service residents, but personally, no effect.
Gotcha. And as it relates to the West Lakes Partnership, we noticed there's now food distribution on a regular basis. We were seeing it once in a while over the last few months, but now it's bi-weekly distribution, correct?
Correct. Awesome. We have done 9 food distributions. Mm-hmm. We've served over about 113,300 pounds of food to residents of the West Lakes neighborhoods. And those neighborhoods are Rock Lake, Lake Lorna Doone, Lake Sunset, and the 2 Clear Lake neighborhoods off Orange Center Boulevard. So we have made sure, in partnership with Florida Citrus Sports, the Arnold and Winnie Palmer Foundation, and various other partners. And I'd really like to call out our elected officials who we share the area with, Commissioner Burns, Commissioner Hill, State Representative Antone, and State Senator Bracey for also doing food drops in the area to make sure residents, not only in West Lakes, but in other neighborhoods that surround us, have been taken care of during this crisis. We'll continue to do food drops up until August 22nd, and we'll evaluate whether or not we'll continue it. And based on what we are seeing out there, there's a need to continue doing those food drops. But my board will have to make that decision.
Got you. And give us your thoughts on the sort of top of mind conversation nationally right now, which is schools reopening in the fall. Like, what are your personal thoughts on it? How do you feel that the city of Orlando or Orange County should go about doing that? Like, just give us your opinion on it.
Well, that's a difficult decision for those who have to make it, because they're getting pressure from people higher up, so to speak. And so that's an extremely difficult decision that they're going to have to make, because they're weighing health concerns with the need to, quote unquote, get back to normal, whatever that means now, given the virus. Um, so that's an extremely difficult decision. I know having children in a safe space as a parent is important to me, and a number of parents are worried about that. And I don't know how school systems throughout the country are going to address that. I do know that the largest school system in LA County is closed down for at least this year. And I think San Diego as well. I know the Orange County system is considering what they're going to do. So that's a difficult decision. I wouldn't want to trade places with those leaders for love or money. So hopefully they make the right decision for children, for parents in Orange County.
Thank you for that. That was a kind of well-rounded answer. And I agree. It's a very difficult decision to make. We actually, on our evening news rundown yesterday, had our guest contributor Angel Perry here, and we had that conversation here because there was a recent story from back in Arizona. The three teachers who were teaching in summer school, because the summer school was open, they shared the same classroom, and all three contracted COVID-19, and one unfortunately passed away. So, yeah, thank you for your opinion on that. That is definitely something that the go ahead. You were gonna say something?
No, I have a friend who knew that teacher who passed away.
Wow.
Young lady I grew up with and from my hometown who knew that particular teacher. And so that's a very sad story. And, they took all the precautions in the world. It isn't like they had students in the classroom, but nevertheless, one caught it and unfortunately passed away, as you indicated.
Absolutely. And guys, the conversation continues. So, like, this may be politics and power, but if you have an opinion on how schools should reopen, whether or not they should reopen at all, by all means, leave a comment below. We'd love to share that. We'd love to share it with Mr. Ayers here. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick commercial break and come back and start getting into the brass tacks of how the West Lakes Partnership works. For those of you who may not be familiar with the organization and want to learn more about it, if you are curious about the West Lakes neighborhoods and how what all of that entails, we're going to get into that when we come right back. Stay tuned, guys.
It takes experience to know the difference in property values. For example, this business is not the same as this business. And this house is definitely not the same as this house. And this, well, this is definitely not the same as this. And that's why it's important to have someone who understands true property appraisals to help our community grow, while making sure everyone pays their fair share. Because experience matters. Re-elect Rick Singh for Orange County Property Appraiser.
All right, guys, we are back with the FNN Politics and Power Show. Thank you again, Mr. Ayers, for being on today. I wanted to get into, obviously some of the more specifics. So one of the aims or part of the mission of the West Lakes Partnership is to develop and revitalize, vacant housing units in that area. And they're roughly less than 150 vacant housing units right now. Kind of walk us through what happens with those once the rehab is completed.
So once the rehab is completed, we're required through a partnership with the city of Orlando. And I want to thank Commissioner Regina Hills for assisting us in getting that. We are required to market those homes to low to moderate income families with the goal of stabilizing the neighborhood by increasing home ownership in it. We have for the most part, a pretty stable rate of home ownership in the area, but we do have a number of homes that are vacant and are in need of updating and modernization. So our goal is to help those residents, whether they live in the neighborhood currently or wish to establish a home ownership in West Lakes, to acquire them. So we work with them even before the house is completed in terms of improving their credit, helping to establish a budget so that they can become a homeowner. So all that is done even before the homeowner or the house is completed and the person becomes a homeowner. We work with them either ourselves or through other third parties to get them situated so that they can get a loan. And once they get a loan, we work with them to help close the deal so that they can become either first-time homeowners or hopefully this may be their second or third house. But we're a nonprofit. We don't do this for profit. Obviously, we don't want to lose money, but we want to make sure that low to moderate income families in Orange County, particularly in West Lakes, move from becoming or being renters to becoming homeowners. So that's our goal.
Gotcha. One moment. Sorry about that. All right. But thank you for that explanation, though. That was important. That was very important. Appreciate that. So given what you just shared and kind of that number of vacant units, how do you guys typically discuss the sort of homelessness issue that's in the area? And if so, how do you guys normally address that, or what steps will the West Lakes Partnership take to address it?
Well, we don't relative to homeless. The houses that we will rehab, because someone is homeless, they typically would not be in the income range that is necessary in order to acquire the home. So in order to acquire the homes that we rehab, it's based on the size of family and the income range that one falls in. So I'm making an assumption here that may not be true, that if you're homeless, you may not have the income that would necessitate you becoming a homeowner. We do have a partner that works in construction of the apartment complex in West Lakes, allows homeless people, about 10% of the units are set aside for the 5 to 10% of the units are set aside to help homeless applicants become renters in that instance. But West Lakes Partnership does not sell homes to homeless individuals at this point.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. And then talk a little bit about the recent development with the Pendana community. Like, what was that process like, and how did it feel for you personally to see it come to fruition?
So that particular, there are two Pendanas, if you will. Pendana 1, which is a 200 unit complex, mixed income. So anyone, whatever upper income may mean, can live there. There are about, I believe it's 40 units. That's for upper income individuals or households. There's about another 140 that are affordable unit. And that definition varies depending on the need of that and the income level of those particular homeowners and households. And then the remaining number of units again are for OHA and homeless individuals. So it's a variety of households, a variety of incomes that live in what we call Pendana 1 for short. Pendana 2 is our senior complex, and this is 120 units of senior only complex, and it just opened up. I think they're nearing completion of filling the unit. if I'm not mistaken. Their goal was to fill it by the end of this month, and I think they're closing in on that. So we have 120 new residents or units that will be filled with residents in that complex. We have over 200 residents who live in Pendana 1, or 200 units of families that live in Pendana 1. So Lift Orlando is the partner that kind of coordinated that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, while I didn't have anything to do with the actual construction and coordination of financing and all that good stuff, what has been heartwarming for me is to meet the new families that have come into West Lakes, because in addition to housing rehab, the primary goal of West Lakes Partnership is to keep residents engaged and having a seat at the table in terms of what's going on in the neighborhood, in terms of programs that we put on so that residents can become a part of. We've been limited by the virus,
Right.
but we continue to have a discussion over how we bind the 5 neighborhoods together. And we continue to do that. And the new residents have just been a blessing in terms of what they've been able to add to the West Lakes community.
And I guess kind of flesh that out a little bit. Are they adding their expertise occupationally, or are they becoming volunteers in the community? What have you seen from them?
A little bit of both, particularly with regards to being involved in our community dinners. Some have started serving on the board or committees that we have had. With apartment dwellers, and I used to be one at one time in my life, those are harder to engage than a homeowner. But they have started to, spread their wings, get involved in community events, and they have their own events in which they invite residents to. So that has just been heartwarming. They have a coordinator over at the apartment complex that plans events for them that they also allow some residents to come to. So they are slowly but surely becoming a part of the fabric of the neighborhood. The existing residents who were there before the 2 complexes were built just enjoy tremendously interacting with them. They help out. I think I have 3 of them who help out at the food distributions, and they just, they come back willingly and lovingly to help their fellow residents during this crisis.
Thanks for that, for sure. And then a little bit of clarification in terms of the housing bids as well. On the website, they had shown a housing bid project that just recently closed. It closed in early April. It looked like another revitalization project, but talk about that. Is that something that's specifically sort of a marketplace kind of thing where a specific property is posted on the website and investors in the area are notified of it so that they can get involved in investing in the rehab? Or how does that work? Kind of talk about that bidding process.
So we're not allowed to partner with investors, nor are investors allowed to purchase the home once it's rehab.
Okay.
What that posting was, that was 519 Sunset Drive, which actually just started. We just got the permission to do the interior demo of the inside of that structure. And then our permit was just approved yesterday to start the actual construction and remodeling of that unit. So what that posting is a bid process that we have to go through, given that we get the money from HUD through the city of Orlando, and we have to post for bids on that project. So with that particular unit, there were 3 contractors. We have to get a minimum of 3 bids or 3 contractors who submit bids. We did get that number, and we chose what we considered the best of the 3, submitted that bid to the city for approval. They approved it, and now work is underway on that project. We have to finish that project by the September 30th. of this year, before the new federal fiscal year starts. Now, that doesn't mean we have to have a homeowner lined up for it. Obviously, we would like to position someone to purchase that home as soon as it's done. But as long as it's done prior to September 30th, we're in great shape. And we're shooting for September 15th in terms of completing that project. And then we will put it on the market, and hopefully some of the families we are working with, applicants we are working with, we will have them ready to become homeowners for that house.
Awesome. Appreciate that clarification as well. Cool.
No problem.
And then on the real estate front, there's an interesting thought that occurred to me while I was doing the research. Obviously, for projects like these, it involves people who are already well versed in real estate, people who are already involved in it. Obviously, the priority is for residents of that community because the organization is for them. But I did want to find out would Westlake's partnership consider offering real estate education courses, or do you guys already offer them for residents who may be interested in something like that? Maybe they're interested in being directly involved in revitalizing the community by purchasing some of the vacant units or anything like that, and maybe they just lack the know-how. Is there a program for that?
We do a number of things. Our neighborhood engagement committee, which is chaired by one of the residents, Antoinette Giles from Lake Sunset, has done she and one other resident from Rock Lake have done a tutorial on how to purchase real estate in the area, but from an individual perspective. We, through our partnership with Lift Orlando, they have financial well-being that talks about, again, how to become homeowners, how to get your credit together, stuff like that. They offer, currently they offer online webinars on that. I never thought about it from the perspective of how to reach out to developers. So that's something I will consider and move from there. I did have a conversation with one potential developer in the last 2 weeks who wants to look at how we can accelerate the process of converting a number of vacant homes. And we, again, only go after vacant homes, converting a number of vacant homes into rehab homes so that we can put them on the market for individuals to become homeowners, to accelerate that process. So that's the closest we have come to it. So that's an interesting idea for us to consider.
Cool. And that's a actual good transition point in which we're going to take one more quick commercial break, guys. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Westlake partnership with Lift Orlando and, couple of the other organizations that, Westlake's partnership is connected to, because we tend to hear those organization names all the time. So we're going to get Tim to kind of clarify a couple things for us, let us know a little bit more about that partnership. But stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.
At Duke Energy, we deliver electricity and so much more, like free home energy assessments, rebates for energy-saving improvements, payment options to help you better manage your budget, and even bill credits for helping the community use less energy. So no matter what you're doing, we can help you make better energy choices every day. It's just another way we bring power to your life. How much can you save?
All right, guys, welcome back to the FNN Politics and Power Show. And of course, we are here with Westlake's Partnership Executive Director, Tim Ayers. Thanks so much. Kind of talk about the organization's vision to develop a business district, because I know that's one of the other things that the Westlake's Partnership wants to do. So talk a little bit about that vision and where you guys are in that process.
We are working with the city of Orlando, who has just been tremendous in assisting us. A Main Street program, the first of its kind, actually. Well, it will be the second of its kind, in the west neighborhoods of Orlando. in trying to create a Main Street program that will focus on and assist businesses in the West Lakes community to help them grow. And, if nothing else, what COVID, beyond health concerns among individuals, has shown us is the hardship it has placed on businesses. And in the West Lakes community, we have seen it. I've seen 2 or 3 of them closed. I've had to assist others in getting COVID relief, making sure we stay in contact with them, so that, they at least know what resources are out there. So we are working with the city that at some point this year or next year to be designated as one of the several neighborhoods that are market or Main Street neighborhoods in the city of Orlando. So hopefully we'll have some good news to report by the end of the year on that project, so that we can strengthen the businesses that exist in West Lakes.
And you mentioned earlier before the break, Lift Orlando, which you guys partner up to do a lot of projects. So Lift Orlando is one partner, and then also you guys partner with Polis Institute. So kind of talk about, because those can be very similar, like they have very similar aims in terms of creating solutions to revitalize communities or improve communities. So kind of talk about what the distinctions are between those organizations.
I understand the confusion. Long before I became executive director of West Lakes Partnership, I think even before Lift Orlando was named Lift Orlando, they and Polis Institute started engaging the residents of West Lakes in a vision that all of the parties at the table developed. And in so developing, was birthed out of that by residents. Okay, we want a seat at the table too, in addition to attending meetings. So they created an organization called the West Lakes Economic Opportunity Council, which is the predecessor organization of West Lakes Partnership. And out of that grew the need to make sure every neighborhood had a representative on the board of West Lakes Partnership. So the distinction between the 3 entities, because they all 3 still exist, still are engaged in the West Lakes neighborhood, is this. Here's how I like to explain it. Others would explain it different, and they would be right, and so would I, for that matter. West Lakes Partnership, in addition to housing rehab that we have talked about today, we focus mainly on making sure residents are engaged in the conversation about development in the neighborhood and determining what they would like to see take place in their neighborhood. So that's what we focus on mainly. Polis Institute, primarily, although not exclusively, focuses in on evaluating whether or not West Lakes Partnership, or even for that matter, Lift Orlando, is doing what they stated they would do in the resident or to the residents of the neighborhood. They're evaluating the effectiveness of programs that Lift or West Lakes Partnership does. Lift Orlando kind of does the heavy lifting, and what I mean by that is, they coordinated the financing, coordinated the construction of the apartment complex. They're working on the Boys and Girls Club in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of Central Florida. They worked with Advent Health in terms of the construction of the Early Learning Center. And the last project that will be under construction sometime by the end of this year or early next year is the hub, which will have a space for a medical complex and office complex for residents to come for medical assistance, as well as just have a cafe and some other amenities that residents can use just as a focal point in the neighborhood. That's what Lift does, and that work is evaluated by Polis Institute in addition to the work we do. So that's the distinction between the 3 entities. Sometimes we agree with each other, sometimes we don't. Right. But the work that's done in the field of community development is never easy, and it requires difficult conversations. And we somehow work it out in the end in order to accomplish the promises we have made to residents.
Got you. And I'm going to simplify this for our audience and kind of tweak this
Okay.
if I'm not correct about it. But it sounds like each of the three, there's kind of a synergistical connection. So it sounds like the West Lakes partnership is the beginning of the conversation. Then you have Polis Institute that would take that conversation, if you will, and create sort of not a checklist. I don't want to make it sound that simple, but it systematizes that conversation, if you will, or codifies it. And then Lift Orlando is the execution of the ideas or the execution of the conversation. Does that sound about right?
That's close. I would say ideas sometimes emerge from the partnership, sometimes they emerge from Lyft.
Mhm.
What Polis does is make sure that whatever those ideas are or whatever those projects might be, is that they're being implemented fairly and consistently match with what residents expected at the end. And sometimes they have to step in and mediate that process between Lyft, who may be the executor of the idea, and residents who may have concerns over it, or concerns over projects that we do, for that matter. That's how I would outline the roles that each of the three organizations play.
Gotcha.
And it is, it is difficult for particularly our newer residents to understand, because they look at us sometimes, or they'll say to me that, all of you are the same, because our building, my office is housed in the Lyft building that they lease from OCPS. Polis has a separate space, but they run the MVP family organization or program that's aimed at kids in our neighborhood. So sometimes they have a hard time distinguishing the difference between the three organizations. But, what we try to, or what I try to emphasize is it isn't important what role each of the organization plays. It's the outcome to residents, to kids in the neighborhood that are important from my perspective and from my board's perspective.
Got it. Okay. And you talked a little bit earlier, you touched on the CARES Act a little bit in terms of, what's happening during the pandemic and folks who have applied for it. So I wanted to find out from you, like, have you heard any success stories from small businesses in the West Lakes community or residents who have been beneficiaries, people who have successfully received funding from the Orange County CARES Grant?
I have not on the Orange County CARES program. I think we referred we referred more, but about 15 businesses from West Lakes got PPP money that did assist them. I can tell you from a conversation we had at one of our Lunch and Learn virtual sessions yesterday that's aimed at businesses in the West Lakes community, that I believe Orange County has set aside $64 million for small business relief, and has only been able to give out in the low to mid 20 million. So if there are businesses, pardon me, if there are businesses not only in West Lakes but throughout the county that are in need of assistance, please call Orange County government. It's a fairly easy process for you to go through as long as you have all your paperwork ready. It's not that complicated, and government programs typically tend to be, but it really isn't, at least in terms of the application that I saw. And we really need businesses in this community to survive and be successful and overcome this current crisis that we're in. And we all know that businesses, particularly in neighborhoods of color, have a harder time than some other businesses in other neighborhoods. So I need as many businesses in Westlakes and Paramore and other neighborhoods to apply for the program that Orange County is putting forth, and to get their paperwork in a timely manner. I don't know what the deadline is, but I do know they still have a whole bunch of money that's left in the pot, and we want to get as many businesses who are in need of assistance in as possible.
Awesome. And I wanted to go back to another item that you were speaking about a little bit earlier in terms of working closely with the local government. So I wanted to find out what that process is like, for the Westlakes Partnership. Do you guys typically attend the city council meetings, the county board of commission meetings? Are you doing your proposals there by way of public comment? Do you schedule private meetings with elected officials in those, particularly, District 5, Commissioner Hill or County Commissioner Siplin? Like, how do you guys normally kind of work the process of meeting with the elected officials to get some policies in place?
I'm not sure of the exact percentage, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but it ranges from 95 to 99% of Westlakes is in City District 5, which is led by Commissioner Hill. Mm-hmm. The only two complexes, if you will, that are in District 6 are both pendant complexes, and what will take place across the street on Orange Center Boulevard that's being headed up by Hannibal Square. So those are the only three outside of those three complexes, two complexes and a parcel of land. Everything else is District 5. So we work mainly with Commissioner Hill. Mm-hmm. We have a great relationship with her. From time to time, we'll hold virtual meetings so that she can update us on things that are taking place in the city. We mm-hmm. try to do the same. I hope to do the same, with Commissioner Burns, with his constituents that are in District 6. We meet, or I meet, either by phone or in person before the virus with housing staff regarding the money we receive, CDBG money that we receive for housing. And then we stay connected with both Commissioner Burns' staff and Commissioner Hill's staff in terms of relating concerns that residents have or referring residents to whichever office represents their particular. Sometimes mostly I refer them to both commissioners and allow them to pick who they want to interact with in terms of getting information from the city, or if they have a concern about city services, directing them to City Hall so they can get their concerns addressed. In terms of what residents are doing, and we don't go to city meetings. I listen to city council meetings online mm-hmm. unless we're needed down there. We strongly encourage our residents individually to go down to city council meetings, to request to be appointed to city boards and commission, because a part of our mission is to empower the residents in Westlakes. And to do so and to have a seat at the table means you have to be present and in the room in order to have your voice heard. So we continue to encourage that. I know Commissioner Hill does. I know Commissioner Byrne does. And I know their staff has been extremely involved in trying to encourage residents from their two districts to get involved in that as well.
Got you. And last kind of referral backwards, but I wanted to also touch on the Westlakes Early Learning Center. You briefly mentioned that a little bit earlier as well. Talk about what that process was like in terms of bringing or developing that, and where is it in the process, and how did Advent Health get involved with that?
Wow. So that was a project that, again, didn't fall under our umbrella, but it's one of our pride and joy.
Hmm.
Residents, we'd never had a chance to do an open house because at the time we were scheduling one, COVID happened. So
Mm.
we didn't have a chance to kind of, do ribbon cutting ceremony or to open it up to the community to view. But I have been in the facility a couple of times, actually 3 times. It is state-of-the-art facility done jointly by Advent Health and Lift Orlando, and it's just a magnificent cathedral to teach our young babies in. Currently, it is currently open. Obviously, they're following CDC guidelines relative to how you drop off your children or child. I believe they have like 54 children enrolled currently. I can say they're trying to expand um, to add 3 additional classrooms. And so they are looking for 14 additional teachers. So if you're interested in working with the Early Learning Center, you can give me a call. If you don't mind, I'm going to give your audience my phone number,
Hmm.
and they can give me a call, leave a voicemail, and I'll direct you to the appropriate source. My phone number is 407
Hmm.
955 4243, and just leave your name and number and that you're interested in a position at the Early Learning Center, and I will call you, give you my email address, and you can forward your resume over to me, or I can give you the email address to the Early Learning Center. But the primary purpose of the Early Learning Center is to make sure our babies are ready once they matriculate into elementary school. And the age range, I always get it wrong, so let me do it, is 6 months to 5 years, I believe.
Hmm.
So that our babies are ready both from a school perspective so that they can be successful in elementary school, in middle school, and become Jones High graduates. I'll give a plug for the high school that's in our district, um, become Louisville future Jones High School graduates and be successful there as well, and then move on to the collegiate level. But that's what the Early Learning Center attempts to do, is to make sure our kids are ready to head into the elementary school at reading levels that are appropriate to be successful at the elementary school level.
Got you. And our audience was able to see the phone number. It was up there while you were talking, so we wanted to make sure that they were able to get a
Wonderful.
hold of you.
Did you
Absolutely.
have a picture of the center? I thought I saw it, but I wasn't for sure.
I have the mock-up model here, so folks can take a look at that. Um,
Now,
so.
just FYI, that
Hmm.
building sits at the corner of Long and Dollin Street. That used to be a vacant lot that
Wow.
was high with weeds. Matter of fact, when they started cleaning the lot up, they found hidden
Hmm.
in one of the bushes a motorcycle. I don't know how long it had been there. We don't even know
Wow.
if it was stolen, what it was, but and you can see what beauty exists there now. Um, it is available and open, and again, at the appropriate point, they are. I think I sent out a newsletter where they're seeking more kids, more parents to sign up their kids, and I've
Hmm.
talked to at least half of half of the parents who have their kids enrolled, and they're extremely proud of the work that the ELC staff is doing over there with their children. So, I'm always pleased to hear that from the people we work with and the work that's being done over there.
Well, congrats to Lift Orlando for sure, and Advent Health and the West Lakes community as a whole for now having an ELC. Do you know if that's going to be the only ELC of its kind in the West Lakes communities? Is that going to be the first and only one, or they're going to build others?
I know it's going to be the only one in West Lakes. Whether or
Okay.
not they duplicate it throughout Orange County, or for that matter, it becomes a model in other communities across the country, is another question that's above my pay grade. Obviously, we want to make it successful in West Lakes. I know Advent Health does. Their team there has been extremely supportive. They put together a good administrative team and teaching staff that I think is the right mix of folks that's doing a tremendous job over there at leading the programs and services they offer there. And I should note, to connect to 2 points I made earlier. So from time to time, our food drops become food deliveries, and we take food over to the families that are involved in the ELC. We do the same with the senior complex at Lake Lorna Doone, as well as the senior complex at Pendana 2, to make sure that those residents' needs are met as well. So, you know, while we call them food drops, they sometimes become food deliveries, where we go where the need is. And the need, as you can guess, is with families at the ELC and the vulnerabilities of seniors in our community. We try to take care of them as well.
Great point. Thanks for adding that bit of detail in there for our listeners. Well, guys, we're going to take another quick commercial break. And as you guys know, if you're watching all of our Politics and Power interviews, we come to that point where we start asking questions about the person. Like, we get into the deep stuff and talking about the work itself, but we always like to wrap things up in talking about the person so you guys can connect with them on a more personal level. So we're going to do that with Tim Ayers when we get back from this quick commercial break. Stay tuned.
Sounds great.
We wanted to move back home to be closer to his family. We decided to go with pods because things were stressful enough.
We weren't sure how long we were going to need storage for, so we needed something that was flexible, and then they can deliver the container to wherever we move to.
We haven't found the perfect house yet, but we're still looking.
All right, guys, and we are back with Tim Ayers. And as always, as we start to wrap up the show, we like to ask those usual questions for you guys to get to learn a little bit more about the individual. So for you, Tim, kind of talk to us about what motivates you, what keeps you going, particularly on those more difficult days where you might be in the midst of a project that's not quite working out. Perhaps those difficult conversations are kind of hitting a brick wall sometimes. What normally keeps you going? What are the things that keep you consistent from day to day?
I'm probably a direct person, and sometimes I'm too direct, and that gets me in trouble. But I have a heart of a servant, and that's in my DNA. My late mother, who started out as a domestic servant, which is a fancy word for, she was a maid. That was her very first job. She ended up, before she retired, as a mental health counselor in our hometown. And we saw the commitment she had to servicing not only her patients, but the people in the community. So I've always been the type of person engaged in community work at some form or fashion, whether it be at Farm Share, in government, or at the Chamber of Commerce when I worked there in Nashville, Tennessee, in terms of trying to help people and communities do better and become better, and be more viable places to live, work, and play. So that's what motivates me. That's what keeps me going, even when, you know, the direct Tim comes out that some people don't like dealing with. You know, I'm gonna be back at work, having fun, hitting the pavement, making sure the projects are done.
Gotcha. And does that also kind of tie into what your favorite part is about the job? Is it like your favorite part being able to serve the people, kind of interact with them, and seeing projects come to fruition?
Seeing projects come to fruition, programs that are successful, but the impact on people is the favorite aspect on jobs. When I know, like I have a friend who's, and really she did it on her own, but she participated in enough programs where, you know, she got what she needed to do together and she became a homeowner. I know the person we sold the first house we rehabbed, the family we sold it to, you know, to drive by their house and to see how lovely they keep it, it just gives me tremendous satisfaction, both as a staff person, and I know it does to members of my board, in terms of seeing people move from one status to a higher status within the community. So this is just, it's great work, it's satisfying work, and you know, I'll continue to do it until I tire of it, which I don't think I will, but we'll see.
Gotcha. And then kind of lastly, as we wrap up, I did want to get your thoughts, given that you are so community focused and have such a drive for service. This is one of the questions we ask a lot of our politics and power guests, but what are your thoughts, you know, post George Floyd, after all the protests, or, I mean, there's still some protests going on, but what do you feel people should do as an effective next step? What do you feel they should direct their energy to do in a way, in a fruitful way, to create change in their communities?
You start at home first, wherever that is. I always say, I've always believed and said that systematic changes start at the most basic level, and that's home.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with our children. And if you don't have children, you have family members, it starts with them. Racism is a learned behavior. It's not something we're born with. It is a learned behavior from someone, people have picked it up either in their family or from their community or from their circle of friends. So you start there first. Secondly, you got to have system changes that reflect, even if people's hearts don't change, that you have to have system changes and laws and policies in place so that the system itself is fair. And, you know, unfortunately, it took the tragedy of his murder for this conversation to be held on a variety of areas. You know, because it started out in terms of the criminal justice conversation, and now it's still centered on that, but it has merged into sports. It has merged in a variety of other areas in terms of how we represent our history. And so I just think we have to focus on, keep it focused on those three areas: how history is represented, how we raise our children and the viewpoints that they have, and how the criminal justice system, some of the policies and procedures in that need to be reformed and changed. And of course, you know, policing is an aspect of the criminal justice system, but it's not the only aspect. I don't want people to get an understanding that if you change everything with policing, that's going to change everything with criminal justice. It's not. Policing is just the face of criminal justice. There's a whole back end of it that also needs to have some changes as well.
Thank you for sharing your feedback on that. And I guess lastly, as is connected to that, one of the things that a lot of people have chosen to do as a course of action is to run for office themselves. Now, as someone who has served, you know, under elected officials before, what do you feel is sound advice for those who are running for office for the very first time?
Well, I have been an elected official and served under elected officials, and I would say it's I'm always amazed, and people in office will say the same thing. I think they will, that people who run for elected office have never attended a school board meeting, a city council meeting, served on a committee. Not that that's necessary, but you need at least some insight about the office that you seek. So I would recommend that, so that you have an understanding of how it operates. Secondly, there are a number of online seminars it's probably difficult to do an in-person, but I do know there are a number of online workshops, webinars on the political process itself. Get involved, become a part of your HOA, learn what your neighbors want. Unfortunately, fortunately, when I was growing up, I knew and still know every neighbor who lived where on my street. That's not as true today. And fundamentally, again, things begin if you want change to take place, change takes place in your neighborhood first. And so become a part of your HOA. We have 5 wonderful HOAs, or actually 6 HOAs and neighborhood associations in our neighborhood. And I know throughout Orlando that's true as well. So become involved there first and foremost. Understand the local political and governmental process, and then go from there.
Well said. Thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for taking the time to be on our show. We appreciate you. And the door is open. If there are ever any updates for the West Lakes Partnership, for the West Lakes communities, we welcome you back on to discuss those.
I appreciate the opportunity. As soon as we finish 519 Sunset, we'll invite you guys out and you can show the end result of the work that was done.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show. Have a great rest of your afternoon. I know you've got quite a few things to do, and we are right at 2 o'clock point. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, guys. Thank you for watching the Thursday edition of the FNN Politics and Power series. Always, your view is always appreciated. If you haven't yet, be sure to like us on Facebook. You'll find us there at Florida National News, at FNN TV, or at FNN News Live. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. You'll find us there at Florida National News as well. And follow us on Instagram. We're there at Florida National News as well. We wanted to be as easy to find as possible. And if you're a small business owner and you're looking to advertise, we welcome you guys to advertise here on our shows. We have a stable of 5 so far, and our stable continues to grow. So be sure to email ads@floridanationalnews.com to find out more information. We'll be glad to send you guys the media kit. So thank you guys for tuning in today. You will see me again at 5 p.m. this afternoon with the evening news rundown, bringing you the latest headlines in the news cycle. We like to keep it bite-sized and quick so you guys can move on with the rest of your day. But in the meantime, thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with me, and I will be back at 5. Take care.
Wow.